Daniel Harper never thought his closest friend would be an alien. They met 5 years earlier on a quiet orbital station that most species ignored. Daniel was an engineer, the kind who fixed problems no one else wanted. His friend Kokstal of the Varelian Union was a trade observer, officially important, unofficially lonely. While others treated Daniel like background noise, Kokstal talked to him, asked questions, listened. That alone made the friendship unusual. Varelians were tall, smooth-skinned beings with eyes like polished glass. They were respected across the galaxy for their wealth and long memory. Humans, by comparison, were still considered new, impulsive, and mostly harmless. Kokstal never seemed to care. When Kokstal died, the message reached Daniel 3 weeks late. He was on Earth when it arrived, standing in line for cheap coffee, when his wrist display chimed with an unfamiliar priority signal. The sender code wasn't human. A language auto-translator hesitated before smoothing the words into something readable. Daniel Harper of Terra, you are summoned to attend the Varelian High Probate Council. Attendance is mandatory. Daniel stared at the message, confused. He almost dismissed it as a scam until he saw the seal. It was real, old, powerful. The coffee went cold in his hand. 2 days later, he was on a transport ship, heading far beyond anything he had ever traveled before. No one explained why. No one answered his questions. The ship was quiet, clean, and very expensive. That made him nervous. He kept thinking about Kokstal. They had spoken only a month earlier. Kokstal had sounded tired but calm. He had joked about humans being better listeners than diplomats. Daniel had laughed, unaware it would be their last conversation. The council chamber was enormous. It was shaped like a hollow sphere, with platforms floating at different heights. Species Daniel had only seen in data files watched from their seats. Some whispered. Others stared openly. A human here was rare enough. A human summoned like this was unheard of. Daniel stood alone on a simple platform in the center. A tall Varelian official began to speak, his voice amplified without effort. We acknowledge the presence of Daniel Harper of Terra. You are here due to the confirmed passing of Kokstal of House Varel. The words hit harder than Daniel expected. Even knowing it already, hearing it said out loud made his chest tighten. He lowered his head in respect, the human gesture feeling small in such a place. Kokstal left a final testament, the official continued. Under Varelian law, it must be read in full. A soft projection appeared in the air. Kokstal's image looked older than Daniel remembered. His eyes were calm, but there was something final in his posture. If you are seeing this, the image said, then I am gone. Do not waste time mourning me.
I lived longer than expected, and better than most. A few council members shifted, amused.
Kokstal went on. I leave my holdings, assets, voting shares, and trade authority to Daniel Harper, not as a favor, as a decision. The chamber exploded into noise. Voices overlapped. Some laughed openly. Others hissed in disbelief. Daniel froze, certain he had misunderstood. The official raised a hand, restoring silence. The testament also includes custodial responsibility over my bonded partner Talaris of House Varel, until such time as the bond is legally resolved. Daniel's mind went blank. Bonded partner. Wife? He swallowed hard, heat rushing to his face. He felt every eye in the chamber turn toward him, no longer amused now. They were sharp, measuring. A second platform slid forward. A Varelian woman stepped into view. Talaris was nothing like the stories humans told about alien spouses. She carried herself with quiet control, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. She wore simple formal markings, the kind used in court, not ceremony. She did not look at Daniel at first. She faced the council.
I acknowledge the testament, she said evenly. I will abide by the law.
Murmurs rippled again, but softer this time.
Daniel found his voice, though it shook. There's been a mistake. I was his friend. I don't want any of this.
That earned laughter. The official regarded him with mild curiosity, like a child who had said something interesting but irrelevant.
Varelian law does not recognize intent after death. The testament is valid. You are now the legal successor. A smaller voice, sharp and cold, cut in from one of the upper platforms. A human cannot manage a Varelian estate. Several council members nodded. He will fail within a cycle, another said. Or surrender it. Daniel felt a slow burn of anger rise beneath the fear. Not because they doubted him, but because they spoke like his presence didn't matter. Talaris finally turned to look at him. Her eyes met his, steady and focused. There was no hostility there. No pity either, just assessment. When the council dismissed the session, Daniel was escorted away before he could ask another question. His legs felt weak as he walked. Everything was moving too fast. In a private chamber overlooking the station's artificial stars, Talaris joined him. They stood in silence for a moment. You look overwhelmed, she said at last. That's one word for it, Daniel replied. I didn't even know he was sick. He did not want sympathy, she said, or interference. Daniel rubbed his face. Why me? Talaris considered that. Because you listened. Because you argued with him. Because you did not want anything from him. That seems like a bad reason to hand someone all of this. It is a very Varelian reason, she said softly. Daniel looked out at the stars. They expect me to fail. Yes. They want me gone. Yes. He laughed once, short and humorless. Great. Talaris stepped closer, lowering her voice. You should understand something, Daniel Harper. Many here will attempt to take what is now yours, through law, through pressure, through means less polite. Daniel turned to her. And you? I am bound to the estate, she said, but not to obedience. Kuktal believed you would survive this. Daniel exhaled slowly. Fear was still there, heavy and real. But beneath it was something else, a stubborn spark he didn't realize had been growing. If I walk away, he said, what happens? The estate is divided. The council absorbs the rest. Humanity remains irrelevant. He thought of Kextal's laugh. His curiosity about humans, his quiet faith. Daniel straightened. And I guess I should learn how alien law works, he said. For the first time, Talaris allowed herself a small, approving smile. And that, she replied, is why they should be afraid. Daniel did not sleep that night. The room they gave him was larger than his old apartment on Earth. The bed adjusted itself to his body temperature. The walls showed calm starfields. Everything was designed for comfort. None of it helped. His mind kept replaying the council chamber. The laughter, the looks, the way they spoke, as if he were already finished. On Earth, Daniel had learned something early in life. When people assumed you were weak, they stopped watching carefully. That mistake had saved him. More than once, a soft sound came from the doorway. Talaris entered without ceremony. She carried a thin data slate in her hands. You should rest, she said. I will, Daniel replied. Later. She studied him for a moment, then nodded.
That is acceptable. She placed the slate on a table between them.
This is a summary of the estate. What Kextal left you. Daniel looked at it like it might explode.
How bad is it? That depends, she said calmly, on your definition of bad. He activated the display.
Numbers filled the air. Trade routes. Shipping contracts, mineral rights, orbital facilities, entire habitats listed as assets. The scale of it made his stomach tighten. This isn't wealth, Daniel said quietly. This is power. Yes, Talaris agreed. That is why you are in danger. Daniel leaned back and exhaled slowly.
They think I'll sell it or hand it over. They believe humans value immediate comfort over long-term position, she said.
That belief has served them well so far, Daniel repeated. He scrolled through the legal notes. Why hasn't someone already challenged this? They will, Talaris replied, but not immediately. Why wait? Because the law allows a transition period. One cycle. They expect you to make mistakes. Daniel smiled faintly. They don't know humans very well. No, she said. They do not. Over the next few days, Daniel was buried in information. He learned that Varelian systems were old, very old. They prized tradition and stability. Laws were layered on top of laws, many written to prevent problems that no longer existed. Humans, Daniel realized, would call it over-engineered. He also learned something else. Most alien systems assumed honesty. Not morality, but predictability. If a rule existed, people followed it. If a process was slow, no one rushed it. Daniel had spent his career fixing systems that failed because no one expected someone to push them sideways. That gave him ideas. The council summoned him again at the end of the week. This time, the chamber felt colder. Daniel Harper, the same official said. You are required to declare your intent regarding the estate. Daniel stood straight. His hands were steady. I intend to manage it, he said. The reaction was immediate. Objections flew from multiple platforms. He is unqualified. He lacks species authority. He has no advisors. Daniel waited. When the noise died down, he continued. I will not dissolve assets, he said. I will not sell controlling shares. I will not transfer authority. The official tilted his head. You understand the responsibility? Yes. Then you must name a governance structure within 3 days. Daniel nodded. Already done. That earned silence. Talaris watched carefully. Daniel activated his wrist display. A network map appeared, complex and branching. I am forming a distributed management council, he said, with representatives from multiple neutral species, shared incentives, transparent reporting. A sharp voice cut in. That is inefficient. Daniel looked toward the speaker. Only if you value control over resilience. Murmurs spread. No single failure will collapse the system, Daniel continued. No single house will dominate it either. Some faces darkened at that. The council recessed early. That alone told Daniel he had shaken them. The pressure began almost immediately. Trade partners sent polite messages suggesting guidance. Legal experts offered help at high cost. Some were honest. Most were traps. Daniel declined them all. Instead, he did something unexpected. He invited human consultants. The reaction across the station was quiet disbelief. Humans were not forbidden from trade councils, but they were rarely included. They were considered short-term thinkers. Too emotional. Too unstable. Daniel knew better. Humans understood chaos. They lived in it. The first advisory meeting was awkward. A human economist, a logistics planner, and a systems analyst stood beside alien representatives who clearly doubted their presence. Daniel addressed them simply. Assume everyone else is smarter than us. How do we still win? The human economist smiled. By changing the game. That became the pattern. They didn't fight alien systems head-on. They worked around them. They used timing differences, communication delays, and overlapping jurisdictions. What aliens saw as rigid rules, humans saw as tools. Talaris watched all of this with growing interest. You do not act like other leaders, she said one evening as they reviewed reports. I don't feel like one, Daniel replied. That may be an advantage. The first real attack came quietly. A trade route malfunctioned. Not destroyed. Not sabotaged. Just delayed. Enough to cause penalties. Daniel studied the report. This wasn't random. No, Alaris said.
It was a test. He nodded. Then let's answer. Instead of fixing the route directly, Daniel rerouted traffic through 3 smaller paths.
Less efficient on paper. Faster in practice. The penalties vanished. The attackers gained nothing. Word spread. A week later, a legal challenge arrived. A minor house claimed the inheritance, violated cultural precedent. Daniel attended the hearing alone. They expected confusion. Instead, he asked questions. Simple ones. Where is that precedent written? Which edition? Does this amendment apply to cross-species bonds? By the end, the challenge collapsed under its own weight. The council was no longer amused. Talaris stood beside Daniel as they left the chamber. They did not expect you to fight, she said. I'm not fighting, Daniel replied. I'm learning. That night, Daniel received a private message. No seal, no signature, just a warning. You are exceeding tolerance. Step aside. Daniel deleted it. A few hours later, security alerted him to an intrusion attempt, not physical. Financial. Someone had tried to isolate one of the estate's outer facilities. Daniel smiled grimly. They're getting impatient. He stayed awake until morning, coordinating responses, rerouting authority, locking systems behind layers no one had bothered to use before. By dawn, the threat was gone. Talaris watched him quietly. You are changing perceptions, she said. Good, Daniel replied, because they still think this ends with me losing. She tilted her head. And does it? Daniel looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them were people already planning his failure. No, he said. This ends with them realizing humans don't quit just because the room laughs at us. For the first time since Kekstal's death, Daniel felt something close to confidence, not because he was powerful, but because he was no longer alone. And the galaxy had just begun to notice. Daniel learned something important in the 3rd week. The galaxy did not like uncertainty. At first, the attacks had been careful. Small, legal moves. Quiet, trade pressure. Now, the tone changed. Meetings were canceled without reason. Ships were delayed for inspection. Contracts were questioned even when they were clearly valid. No one said his name openly, but Daniel felt it everywhere. They are coordinating, Talaris said as they reviewed the latest reports. Several houses that do not usually agree are moving in similar patterns. Daniel rubbed his eyes. So I've become a common problem. Yes, that's almost flattering. She looked at him for a long moment. You should be afraid. I am, he said. I'm just not frozen. That same day, an invitation arrived. It was from a major trade consortium, one that controlled shipping lanes across 3 regions. The message was polite, formal, and very dangerous. They requested a private negotiation. Talaris read it twice. This is not a request. Daniel nodded. They want to see if I can be pressured. Or removed, she added quietly. Danielle considered his options. If I don't go, they will say I'm arrogant. And if you go, Talaris said, they will test your limits. Daniel smiled slightly. Then let's show them where those limits are. The meeting took place on a neutral station, old and well guarded. The room was wide, with a long table and no obvious security. That alone made Daniel uneasy. 5 representatives waited for him. All powerful, all experienced, none human. They did not stand when he entered. "Daniel Harper," one of them said. "You hold assets that disrupt long-standing balance." "I didn't take them," Daniel replied calmly. "They were given. That distinction is irrelevant." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Then we're already disagreeing." The representatives exchanged looks. "You are new," another said. "You lack understanding. We can offer protection." Daniel tilted his head. "From what?" "From consequences." There it was. Daniel took a slow breath. "Let me be clear. I'm not here to sell. I'm here to cooperate." "On whose terms?" a third asked. "Everyone's," Daniel said. "That's the point." They did not like that answer. The meeting ended without threats, but the air was heavy with them. Daniel left, knowing something had shifted. That night, the estate was hit harder than ever before. 3 shipping routes failed at once. Communications lagged. A resource station stopped responding. Daniel didn't panic. Instead, he called his human advisors. "Worst case scenario," he told them.
Assume everything fails. What still works? The systems analyst answered first. Redundancy.
Humans build for failure. Aliens build for stability. "Then we lean into failure," Daniel said. He authorized changes that made alien administrators uncomfortable. Temporary leadership nodes, automated decision thresholds, human-style contingency chains. It looked messy. It worked. By morning, 2 routes were restored through alternate paths. The resource station came back online after bypassing a protocol no one had touched in centuries. The 3rd route stayed down. "That one was deliberate," Talaris said. "They want you to react emotionally." Daniel smiled thinly. "Then I won't?" He did something unexpected. He announced the temporary closure of that route himself. The galaxy reacted with surprise. Closing a route voluntarily was seen as weakness, or madness. But Daniel attached data, cost analysis, long-term projections. He showed that keeping it open would have caused more damage later. The criticism slowed. Then something worse happened. An accusation. A formal charge reached the council claiming Daniel had manipulated trade flows to favor humans. It was false, but it was dangerous. If proven, it would strip him of authority. The hearing was scheduled quickly, too quickly. Daniel stood before the council again, but this time, the room felt different. The laughter was gone. Now, there was interest, hunger. "You are accused of bias," the official said. "How do you respond?" Daniel did not rush. "I respond with transparency," he said. He opened the estate's records. All of them. Gasps rippled through the chamber.
"You expose too much," one counselor hissed. Daniel looked at them.
Humans believe trust is built, not assumed. The data was clear. Human involvement was minimal.
Neutral species benefited more than anyone. The accusation collapsed. But the damage lingered. As Daniel left the chamber, Talaris walked beside him in silence. "They will escalate," she said. "I know. And they may not follow the law next time." Daniel stopped walking. He turned to her. "Why are you still here?" She met his gaze. "Because I choose to be." That answer mattered more than she knew. The escalation came 3 days later. A private security force attempted to seize one of the estate's hubs. Not officially, not openly. They claimed temporary oversight. Daniel received the alert while eating, of all things. He stood slowly, pushing the food aside.
"Lock everything," he said. "No force." Talaris looked at him sharply.
"They will not wait. Then neither will we." Daniel sent a single message, not to the council, to the public networks. He released evidence, contracts, communications. Proof of coordination between rival houses, not accusations. Facts. The reaction was immediate. Neutral species froze their cooperation. Trade slowed. Questions flooded the council. The security force withdrew within hours. That night, Daniel sat alone, staring at the stars. He felt tired. Older. Talaris joined him quietly. "You have crossed a line," she said. "I know. There is no going back." Daniel nodded. "There never was." She studied him. Kextal believed humans would change the galaxy through persistence.
I think he underestimated you. Daniel let out a quiet laugh.
I don't feel powerful. Neither did he, she replied. The next day, a message arrived from an unexpected source.
A coalition of smaller species requested a meeting. They wanted alignment, support, representation. Daniel read the message twice. "They're choosing sides," he said. "Yes," Talaris replied, "and they chose you." Daniel felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. This was no longer about survival. It was about direction. He straightened slowly. "Then let's make sure we don't become what they fear," he said. Talaris inclined her head. "That may be the most human thing you have done yet." Far across the station, unseen and unhappy, powerful figures watched the data shift. The human had not broken. He had adapted. And that, more than anything else, unsettled them. Daniel did not have time to enjoy the support. The moment the smaller species aligned with him, the balance shifted. Quiet pressure turned into open resistance. Meetings were no longer polite. Messages carried sharp language. Trade lanes that once slowed now stopped completely. The galaxy had decided that ignoring the human was no longer an option. "They are afraid," Talaris said as they reviewed the latest situation reports. "Not of you alone. Of what you represent." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on the table. "A mistake? A change," she corrected. "And change frightens those who benefit from stillness." The coalition meeting took place on a rotating habitat far from the main powers. It was neutral ground, but the tension followed them inside. Representatives from dozens of smaller species gathered, each with their own fears and hopes. Daniel stood before them, feeling the weight of their attention. "I won't promise protection I can't give," he said plainly. "And I won't ask you to follow me blindly." Some looked surprised, others relieved. "What I can offer," Daniel continued, "is transparency, shared systems, a voice where you didn't have one before." A representative with scaled skin spoke up. "And when the large houses retaliate?" Daniel did not hesitate. "Then we adapt together." The word "together" echoed through the room. The coalition formed that day, not as an empire, but as a network. It had no single ruler, no throne. That alone made the major powers nervous. The response was swift. A formal declaration arrived from the High Council. Not a war notice. Something worse. Emergency authority. Under the claim of system instability, the Council announced temporary centralized control over key trade infrastructure. Daniel's estate was named as a primary concern.
They are taking control without admitting they are, Daniel said quietly.
"Yes," Talaris replied. "And if you resist openly, you become the threat they claim you are." Daniel stared at the message for a long time. "Then we don't resist openly." The next phase was subtle. Daniel instructed coalition members to comply with the new rules, but to document everything. Delays, contradictions, inefficiencies. He knew something the Council did not. Central control looked strong. It was also slow. As systems clogged under their own weight, the coalition quietly optimized within the gaps. Small reroutes, shared storage, temporary exchanges that stayed legal but flexible. The council gained authority. Daniel gained speed. Then came the ultimatum. A sealed message, delivered privately. "You will step down as a state head," it read. "Transfer authority to a neutral administrator. In return, your safety and status will be preserved." Daniel showed it to Talaris.
"They are offering exile with comfort," she said.
"Better than failure," Daniel replied. "For them," she agreed. Daniel deleted the message. That night, the station's lights dimmed unexpectedly. Security systems flickered. Talaris was at his side instantly.
"This is not normal." Daniel was already moving.
"They're testing physical limits now." A second alert sounded. "Unauthorized vessels approaching one of the coalition hubs."
Not military ships, enforcement craft. Legal force. Daniel's jaw tightened.
"They think I'll back down if they push hard enough."
"What will you do?" Talaris asked. Daniel paused. For the first time, he felt fear twist sharp and real. Not for himself. For everyone who had trusted him. Then he remembered Earth. Its noise, its chaos. How humans survived not by being strongest, but by being stubborn. "We don't fight. We endure." He sent instructions across the network. No resistance, no escalation. Every hub followed protocol. Every rule. Every demand. The enforcement craft arrived to empty facilities and cooperative staff. Nothing to seize. Nothing to punish. The galaxy watched, confused. The council expected defiance. Instead, they got compliance that revealed how unnecessary they were. Within days, shortages appeared. Minor at first, then noticeable. Centralized systems struggled to respond to local needs. The coalition adapted faster. Whispers began to spread. The human systems work better. That was dangerous. The council called an emergency assembly. Daniel was summoned. This time, the chamber was full.
"You have destabilized interstellar order," one counselor accused.
Daniel stood calmly. "I followed every directive. You undermined authority." "I obeyed authority," Daniel replied. The results speak for themselves. Silence fell. Talaris watched the council carefully. She saw anger, fear, and something else. Doubt. A vote was called. Not to remove Daniel, to investigate the council itself. The chamber erupted. Daniel felt his breath catch. He had not expected this. The vote passed by a narrow margin. The council adjourned in chaos. As Daniel left, Talaris walked beside him, her expression unreadable.
"You didn't plan this," she said.
No, Daniel admitted, but maybe the system did. That night, Talaris requested a private conversation. They stood in a quiet observation room, stars drifting slowly past. "There is something you must understand," she said. "My bond to Kextal was political, strategic." Daniel nodded. "I know, but my presence here," she continued, "is no longer required by law." He looked at her. "And yet you stay." "Yes." "Why?" She took a moment before answering. "Because you treat power as responsibility, not ownership." Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. "I'm just trying not to break things." She met his gaze.
"That may be why you are changing them."
Outside, the galaxy shifted uneasily. The human had not seized control. He had shown another way. And now, no one knew how to stop that idea. Daniel stood alone at the edge of the observation deck, watching the slow movement of ships across the distant stars. The galaxy felt different now. Not quieter, but uncertain, like it was holding its breath. The investigation into the High Council moved slowly, but its effects were immediate. Authority that once felt absolute now hesitated. Orders were questioned. Decisions were delayed. For the first time in generations, power had to explain itself. Daniel did not celebrate. He was too tired for that. Messages arrived constantly. Some were supportive. Others were angry. A few were openly threatening. He read them all, then set them aside. He had learned something important over the last few weeks. Fear spoke loudly. Confidence did not need to. The coalition continued to function, quietly and efficiently. Trade stabilized. Resources flowed where they were needed. No single species dominated. No one pretended it was perfect. But it worked. That frightened the old powers more than any weapon ever could. Talaris joined Daniel on the deck. She stood beside him without speaking for a long moment. "The council will not return to what it was," she said at last. Daniel nodded.
Neither will I. You could leave, she said.
"Step back. Let others take control."
I could, Daniel agreed.
But then nothing really changes. She studied him. "You sound certain." "I'm not," he said honestly. But I know this much. If humans are involved now, we can't pretend the galaxy stays the same." The final assembly was called 1 week later. Every major power sent representatives. So did the smaller species. Observers filled every level of the chamber. The air felt heavy with history. Daniel stood at the center again. This time, no one laughed. The presiding official spoke carefully. Daniel Harper of Terra.
You have been asked to clarify your long-term intentions. Daniel took a breath.
"I don't want a throne," he said. "I don't want control over the galaxy." Some shifted uncomfortably. "I want systems that don't break when one person fails. I want voices heard before they become problems. I want cooperation to be normal, not exceptional." A counselor spoke sharply. "You speak like an idealist." Daniel met their gaze. "No. I speak like an engineer." That caused a ripple of quiet reaction. "I propose this," Daniel continued. "The estate transitions into a trust, governed by multiple species. Transparent oversight, no permanent head."
Gasps echoed. "You would give up power?" someone demanded.
Daniel nodded. Yes. Talaris watched closely. This, too, had not been fully planned. "And your bonded authority?" another asked, eyes flicking toward her. Daniel turned slightly. "That bond was never about ownership. It ends today." Silence fell. Talaris stepped forward. "I confirm this," she said clearly. "By choice." The council had no answer ready for that. The vote that followed was long and tense. When it ended, the result surprised nearly everyone. The proposal passed, not by a large margin, but enough. The estate changed hands that day, not into chaos, but into shared responsibility. The coalition gained recognition. The council lost absolute authority. The galaxy did not collapse. It adapted. In the days that followed, Daniel felt something lift from his shoulders. The pressure eased. The constant alerts slowed. For the first time since Kextal's death, he slept deeply. He visited the memorial alone. Kextal's name was etched into the stone, surrounded by symbols of trade, history, and legacy. Daniel stood quietly, hands folded behind his back. "You were right," he said softly. Listening mattered. He felt no regret, only gratitude. Later, as he prepared to leave the station, Talaris met him at the transport bay. "You are returning to Earth," she said. "For now," Daniel replied. "Humanity needs to understand what just happened." She inclined her head. "They will listen." "Eventually," he said with a faint smile. She hesitated. Our paths may cross again. I hope they do. They shared a moment of silence, then parted without ceremony. As Daniel's ship pulled away, the station grew smaller behind him. The galaxy stretched wide ahead. Humans were still new, still underestimated. But now they were noticed. Not for their strength, not for their weapons, but for their refusal to accept systems that only worked for the powerful. Far across the stars, conversations had already begun. About humans, about change, about a future that no longer belonged to just one kind of mind. Daniel leaned back in his seat, eyes closing briefly. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. It had complicated it, and that, he knew, was only the beginning.